It happened at 4:06 in the afternoon, on a Tuesday that felt just like any other, until it wasn't. Outside the kitchen window, where I was washing dishes, a hummingbird froze mid-flap, its tiny wings a blur of static motion. A fat drop of rain, which had just started to fall, hung suspended an inch from the glass, like a tiny, perfect jewel. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. It was still there. I called for my husband, David, and our daughter, Lily. They came running, and together we stared out at a world that had become a photograph. Cars were stopped dead in the middle of intersections. People walking their dogs were statues, leashes held taut by invisible force. A kid's red ball was paused at the peak of its arc, forever about to come down. Everything, absolutely everything, was frozen solid in time, except for us. Inside our small two-story house in rural Canada, the clock on the wall kept ticking. The tap water still flowed. Lily's hamster Nibbles was still running on his wheel. Our breaths still misted the cold window pane. We were an island of motion in an ocean of stillness. At first, it felt like a miracle. A private, exclusive show just for the three of us. Lily found it hilarious. She'd press her face against the glass and make funny poses, trying to mimic the frozen people outside. David and I were more bewildered, a little scared, but also in awe. We checked the news, the internet, the phones. Nothing, just dead air and frozen loading screens. The power was still on, but it seemed disconnected from the outside world, like we were running on some kind of internal battery. The first day passed in a surreal blur. We ate dinner, watched a movie from our old DVD collection, and went to bed, convinced that when we woke up, everything would be back to normal. It wasn't. The hummingbird was still there. The raindrop hadn't moved. The world was exactly as we'd left it. That's when the first real seed of panic took root. How long would this last? Days bled into one another. We counted them by the ticks of our grandfather clock. Day 3, day 7, day 10. The novelty had worn off completely, replaced by annoying, creeping dread. The food in our pantry and fridge started to dwindle. We rationed everything, counting out crackers and measuring portions of canned soup. Outside, the world remained pristine. A half-eaten apple on our neighbor's porch never browned. A puddle in the street never evaporated. There was no decay, no change, nothing spoiled, but nothing ever replenished. On day 12, David, driven by desperation, decided to try leaving. "I have to get to the grocery store," he said, his voice tight. "It's only a few blocks away. I can just take what we need. No one will know." I begged him not to, a terrible feeling coiling in my gut, but he was determined. He opened the front door, the still, silent air from outside feeling heavy and strange. He took one step onto the porch, and then he screamed, a raw, agonized sound that ripped through the silence of our home. He stumbled back inside, clutching his arm, collapsing onto the floor. I rushed to his side. His skin, where it had been exposed to the outside air, was red and blistering, as if he'd been horribly burned. It wasn't a heat burn, though. It was something else. It looked like his skin had aged 50 years in a single second, wrinkled, thin, and brittle. It was as if time itself, the immense weight of all those frozen moments, had crashed down on him the instant he tried to leave our sanctuary. We were prisoners. The invisible walls of our home were the only thing keeping that crushing stillness at bay. The burn healed, slowly, but the hope in David's eyes died that day. We were trapped. The silence from the outside world became deafening. We stopped looking out the windows. What was the point? It was just a constant, taunting reminder of our cage. The strain started to show. We argued over small things, the dwindling food supply, the ticking clock that felt more like a bomb's countdown. Lily stopped playing. She would just sit in her room for hours, talking to her dolls, creating a world where things still moved. On day 18, it happened. We were sitting in the living room, the silence thick enough to choke on, when we heard it, a sound so alien, so impossible, that we all froze. Knock, knock, knock. 3 distinct raps on the front door. We looked at each other, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. Who could possibly be out there? How could anyone be moving? David grabbed a heavy fireplace poker, his hands shaking. I pulled Lily behind me. Slowly, heart pounding against my ribs, I peered through the peephole. A man stood on our porch. He was tall and thin, dressed in a simple, dark suit that seemed strangely out of place. And he was moving. He turned his head slightly, as if sensing my gaze, and a slow, wide smile spread across his face. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a scientist looking at a fascinating, but ultimately insignificant, experiment. I stumbled back from the door, gasping. There's a man," I whispered. David moved to the door, poker held high. "Who are you?" he shouted, his voice cracking. The man on the other side didn't answer immediately. We could hear the faint sound of him chuckling, a dry, rasping sound. Then his voice came, calm and clear, cutting through the door as if it weren't there at all. "You weren't supposed to notice," he said. Notice? Notice what? That the entire universe had stopped. The words made no sense, yet they sent a chill colder than any winter's night down my spine. Before we could react, before David could demand an explanation or I could scream, a single, resonant chime echoed through the world. It sounded like a giant clock striking the hour. And just like that, everything started again. Through the window, I saw the hummingbird zip away. The raindrop hit the glass and streaked downwards. The red ball fell and bounced on the pavement. The car started moving, horns blaring in confusion. The people on the street blinked, shaking their heads as if waking from a dream, completely unaware that any time had passed at all. 4:06 p.m. It was still 4:06 p.m., but for us, 18 days had gone by. I ran to the door and threw it open. The porch was empty. The man was gone. The world was loud and chaotic and alive. But as I looked across the street, a new, horrifying realization dawned on me. Our neighbors, the Hendersons, weren't home. Their car was gone. The half-eaten apple was no longer on their porch. Their house was dark, silent, and empty, just like ours now was. He didn't say we were the only ones who noticed. He said we weren't supposed to. How many other houses were now empty? How many other families had stepped outside at the wrong moment? We were back in the world, but we were ghosts, survivors of a disaster no one else even knew had happened. And somewhere out there, the man in the dark suit was watching, waiting for the next time the clock would stop.